In an undisclosed location, a skull and several bones lay resting on a table. Nothing, a voice would say bluntly. Two men stood over the bones. They were running tests on the remains at the request of Meridius, and despite elaborate attempts, they found nothing. The seemingly wiser of the two men would claim, "These are dead bones. Dead. Burned, moldering bones. There's no symbiote material attached to them. Nothing but a few charred, rotting scraps of human DNA." With confidence, he'd conclude that there was nothing special about these bones except that they once belonged to Eddie Brock. Unbeknownst to him though, in the left eye of the resting skull, the symbol of Null, the creator's symbiotes, now glowed. This was a warning. In an instant, a blast of red matter would flood the air. "In God's name, sound the alarm!" Before he could say any more, the confident researcher from earlier would be rocked in the face by a fist that had just formed. The other man would panic and smash a panel on the wall, sounding the alarms. Facing a man who formed from the red matter and human remains, the researcher would plead, The door's sealed, there's no way out. There's nothing you can gain from hurting me." The strange man would cut him off. "I believe you." With his body now mostly formed, the man would be revealed to be Eddie Brock. "Plenty I can gain from hurting me, though." Eddie Brock would grab at that door, locking the three men in this room. The researcher that was just begging for mercy would try to stop Eddie, telling him that there was no way a human could open that door. Eddie Brock didn't care though. He would pay the man no mind and with all his strength pry at the door. It stood no chance. In an instant, the door was broken and flying back behind the revived Eddie Brock. Looking through the entrance he created, his face was dark, with one eye glowing red. "Switch off pain, regrow torn muscle, operate at peak physical strength. You'd be surprised what a human symbiote can do." The man was stunned. Human symbiotes? The alarm rang as Eddie made his way through the halls. It didn't take long for him to spot the shadows of men holding rifles, preparing to face the sound of the alarm. 5 armed men were grouped together, intending to shoot on sight to kill at will. They stared down the hall that just a second ago was home to Eddie Brock. It was now empty. They were quick to declare the area clear, not knowing that their target was actually hiding above them. Away from the facility, now glowing red from the alarms, 2 people stood talking, a security guard and a younger boy. The boy claimed he needed to pass through to get into town, but the guard saw through his plans. Not that he did a good job hiding his intentions with a bag full of spray cans. The guard held onto the pistol on his side, while warning the kid one last time to turn around before someone gets hurt. Before he could finish his words though, with force, something wrapped around his neck and pulled him back. Now standing nude over the downed guard and in front of the boy, he would say that he needs the bike. Not just that though, he would ask for the boy's clothes, down to the pants only though, saying that he'll go commando, which is very reasonable. Sharing underwear is a bit, Anyway, the boy would begin giving Eddie his clothes and say that he's like a Terminator. Something would catch our main character's eyes though. The boy had white paint. Upon noticing this, Eddie would ask for a favor. He'd later ride off with the bike, a fresh set of clothes, and the Venom symbol sprayed across the back of his new leather jacket, courtesy of the boy from earlier. It wouldn't take long for Eddie to find himself face to face with another roadblock. This time, it was the police locking off an area. They tried to send him on his way, stating, "Go find another town, a nice town. You don't want no part of what's going on in this one." Eddie Brock would pause for a moment, looking up and taking a whiff of the air before looking at the men again. "No, I've got business here." An officer would reply a bit fed up, "Buddy." His partner would stop him before he could go any further. Eddie had his chance to walk away already and has refused to do so despite being warned. Now pissed off, this officer would beat Eddie across the face with his baton. With a giant wound on his face, Eddie would begin. "Fine." With his eyes closed, he'd look forward. "Knit the flesh, knit the bone." The wound would begin to close up, and done. The massive wound was now all but gone. "My turn." With a deadly kick, Eddie would send the officer flying through a car windshield. His partner would begin firing off his gun, piercing through Eddie in multiple places. Like a madman, Eddie would push through all of this and grab the gun as it was shooting at him. He'd then break the weapon that failed to do real damage to him. With the disarmed man at his mercy now, Eddie would make a request. The guard was to call in to the people who set this barricade up and let them know that Eddie was coming. Not only was he coming, but they had no chance of stopping him. But if they stay out of his way, he would solve all of their problems. Later, there would seemingly be a leader in front of a group of armed men. It was the man Eddie's message was delivered to. Their conversation derailed quickly, and the man would claim himself to be the one who owns this place. His name was Len Drexler, and he was far from a fan of the attitude Eddie came to this place with. It didn't take long to go from a greeting to the leader of the group here telling his people to cut Eddie's throat and leave him for the rats. No thanks, the human symbiote would say as he just nearly dodged a knife attack coming from behind. He would grab the wrist of the attacker and effortlessly break the man's arm over his own. The attacks were still coming, flawlessly transitioning from his first victim to the next. Eddie would boot the next one in the face. There was a pause in action. Eddie would then let Len Drexler know that he knew what was going on here. The real one in charge was someone else here. Someone he could smell from the next state over. Another one in the group could see that Eddie already knew about the one really in charge here. He was clearly scared, even mentioning that it ate another person in their group. It was all making sense for Eddie. It was clear Len Drexler was feeding the monster in charge a disloyal member every now and then to keep it satisfied. A kind of symbiotic relationship. Drexler had enough of this talk and readied his pistol to fire at his target, but at the same time, Eddie threw a knife into his hand. Now defenseless, the gang leader told his people to fire at Eddie, but they didn't. They were clearly tired of living in fear of the monster and Drexler. The defeated leader would begin.
It's yours, ain't it? You came for your own. You're the same damn monster.
A second later, the man would be thrown through the glass window of the room holding the real boss. With a smirk, Eddie was all ready and warmed up for his real opponent. The giant red monster with bones around it would be revealed.
Ready when you are, Eddie Brock.
Standing below the giant, Eddie would respond.
There's only one way out of here for you, Bedlam. In chains.
Bedlam would bark back that Brock would be leaving in a closed casket. The two would strike at each other with force, both dealing damage. Bedlam would grab Eddie's head.
Hey Brock, question.
The human symbiote's face would be slammed into the floor. Following the impact, Bedlam would continue.
Do you like apples?
Slam! His face would be blasted into the floor again.
How about them apples?
Again, Eddie's face would be slammed into the floor. Bedlam was now holding a very bruised head.
And those apples, tasty apples.
Once more, his face would be slammed with force.
Bob for the apples, Brock. Frrr! Apples!
Eddie would rip off the flooring he was being slammed into this time.
How do you like, never mind, thought I had something.
Bedlam would be slapped viciously with a hard surface. Beneath the surface he just used for a weapon, Eddie would find a shotgun. A second later, the surface would be drilled into the torso of the beast. In an act of utter savagery, Eddie would fire off the shotgun while it was still attached to the flooring, blasting the insides of the beast, and then saying,
"Well, that was fun."
With a massive hole in his stomach, Bedlam would begin his counter.
This is the fun part. Open wide!
There was now a giant mouth where Bedlam's stomach was previously. A horrific sight now stood before Eddie Brock. Not a moment later, the new beast would eat Eddie Brock, leaving only his legs poking out from the giant mouth. Without any mercy, it would begin chewing him up like bubblegum, and then spit out the now destroyed human. The spit had force. Eddie's remains blasted through the wall, landing amongst the goons occupying the building. This didn't seem to surprise any of the men nearby. Perhaps this is what the monster often did with its prey. Oddly though, this would serve as a reminder for one of the two men seeing this. He took a moment here to ask another man next to him if he'd like some chewing gum. Screaming in pain, Eddie's body would start to reform from the giant clump of human remains. In the mouth of Bedlam, Eddie would take down a monster-like tongue attack, making his way through to the next stage, his own mind. In a room lined with bones, Eddie Brock would be faced with a younger version of himself. The older version would begin.
Look at you, Eddie. A muscle-bound bully, addicted to his own anger, looking for someone to blame for his own life. The me that used to be.
The younger one would respond.
It's our mind, Brock. I can follow your path back into your head, into that human body I'm missing. All I gotta do is get rid of you first. Only one of us can sit in the seat of power, Brock, and it's gonna be.
Before he could finish, the older Brock charged in, cutting off his sentence.
Me!
The two would punch at and grapple each other, trading blows before reaching a stop. The younger Brock wiped blood from his mouth.
You can't win this. I'm you before you lost it all. All you can ever be is Eddie Brock. But I am Venom!
Just then, the younger form would transform into Venom. The older man would dodge the hold of Venom.
That's not an I sentence. You talk about me losing it all. You lost more.
The older Brock would grab at the chest of Venom, ripping the symbiote in half. Eddie would continue.
That pain that makes you stronger, the pain you keep yapping about, it's the pain that comes with the memories you lost. The pain of being a whole person. You have to be Venom, the old Venom, the monster.
With rage, Brock would rip the symbiote into two, roaring out,
Without me, you're not even real.
Now standing over the defeated creature, he'd continue.
What have you been doing all this time without orders? Any lethal protecting? Revenge on Parker? Or did you just sit and simmer? Without you, I'm still Eddie Brock. Without me, you're nothing at all.
At his feet, the symbiote would plead. Eddie would offer it a hand.
But together, we can be Venom, as long as you remember one thing. I'm in charge.
The symbiote would cling to his hand and begin crawling upward. Now together, the two would form a giant strong figure, clad in a deep red and featuring an extra set of arms.